Welcome to Season 4 of Creatively Speaking, Food for Thought. I'm your host, Leanna Weller-Smith, founder and executive creative director of Weller-Smith Design. I have been a fan of our next guest since I was in college when I purchased her book, Inspiration Sandwich. To say I was excited to have this conversation is an understatement. If you are not familiar with that book, I bet there is at least one of her books or products that will ring a bell. In this episode, we delve into the inspiring world of Sark, a renowned author and creative visionary whose journey in publishing and personal healing has captivated audiences worldwide. Known for her viral poster, How to Be an Artist, which became a cultural phenomenon even before social media made the term going viral a thing, Sark's work has resonated deeply with readers and artists alike. With 19 best-selling books and nearly 3 million copies sold, Sark shares how she connects with readers through heartfelt methods and how her creative journey has inspired a wave of storytelling, resilience, and innovation. In this episode, Sark also introduces her upcoming publishing services, Build Your Own Book, Sark's Publishing Pathway, launching January 23rd through the 30th, 2025. This program is designed to support aspiring authors in navigating both self-publishing and traditional publishing avenues. This comprehensive author coaching program empowers writers to find their unique voice and offers personalized support from conceptualization to marketing. Whether you're a budding author or a seasoned writer, Sark's insights provide invaluable encouragement to embrace your creative path. So let's get started. Before we dive into this episode of Food for Thought, I want to provide listeners with a content warning for discussions of suicide and incest. Please use your best judgment before choosing to stay tuned. Hi, Sark. Welcome to Creatively Speaking. I'm so excited to have you on the show with me today.
Oh, Leanna, I'm very excited to be on the show, and I love the name Creatively Speaking.
Oh, thank you. The original idea was to just have conversations about how people bring creativity into their life, even if they feel like they're not creative. But then it's really kind of morphed into a lot of publishing and self-publishing. I still think it fits with it because we're talking about bringing something into the world in a creative way. So
yes, and let me just begin by saying, you know this, but I want anyone listening to know everyone is creative. It's a question of how they express it. And parents are the most creative people on the planet. If you've spent any time in a room with a 2-year-old, you're creative, and you know it.
Absolutely.
And accountants are creative, and it runs across all of our systems. We are all creative.
Absolutely. The one thing that a lot of clients, when they come to us, they'll say, well, you're the creative. Like, I'm coming to you because, and I'm like, no, you actually came to me with this really creative idea, and I'm just going to help you bring it to fruition. So without your idea that was very creative to begin with, this product, this design, this element, it would never have happened. So I'm a true believer in that as well. But I am so excited to have you on today because season 4 of Creatively Speaking is all about the different paths to publishing. And you have this very illustrious career in publishing. And when I found out that you said yes to this interview, I was so excited because I've been following you since I was in college. So I'll give a little story, which is when I went away to school, that was back in 1992, I went to the bookstore and walk in, I have to buy all these art supplies and things like that. And your book, which was Inspiration Sandwich, I'm showing it on the video. This is my version.
I heard you had read it, so I took it out.
Yes. I mean, this was something that it truly, at that time, like, I know there's children's books, there's illustrated books. That's not new, right? But to me, what drew me to this was a new way to look at content. And as a designer, aspiring designer, I was just drawn in by the teachings that you have in here and the creativity that it draws out. You have some very powerful stories in here as well. And there's like business in there as well. So it like covered all of these things as a newly entered college student. And it just really struck me. And so this was my first purchase at the bookstore. And so I was thrilled to get to.
Well, good. And let's let people know, if they're not familiar with that book, it's Stories to Inspire Our Creative Freedom. And it says on the tree trunk, eat this book.
Eat this book.
Eat this book. And if you don't know, Sark books are handwritten and hand colored, and they're like a personal journal. And there's lots of stories. In fact, Leanna, when I heard you read it, I wanted you to pick a number. You know that I have this in the book. Pick a number between 1 and 46.
32.
32. Let's look at chapter 32, in celebration of deep night. So we'll turn to that. It's page 90. The air is filled with the dreams of the sleeping people. I am usually awake from midnight until 7 a.m. It's a rich creative time for me. There aren't any distractions, interruptions, or things to do in the outside world. There's a certain penetrating kind of quiet at night. My pen leaps to paper. Paints and bits of colored paper are scattered across the floor. I shuffle around wearing incredibly wrinkled and well-loved pajamas, robes, sweatshirts, and thick socks. All kinds of new ideas bloom in the night. The nighttime is like special soil for creative gardens. Usually music accompanies me, and special kinds of incense and carefully chosen lighting, and I measure time by mugs of tea. Being nocturnal is a curious thing in a world that promotes the 9-to-5 life. I make no appointments until after 3 p.m., and sometimes people find this odd. Not as odd as I find 9 a.m. So I'll just read that excerpt, and then it goes on. But it's so funny because when I turned 50, 20 years ago, I became a day person.
I was going to ask. I was going to actually ask you that.
Yeah, I was nocturnal for a sad reason. I was abused as a child, and I stayed up to try to defend and protect myself. And then it became a lifestyle. And I literally hired a team to work with me so they were awake in the day. Wow. Because I wasn't awake in the day until I was 50 years old.
Wow.
And I went to have my hormones balanced naturally. And the doctor said, well, you might find your sleep schedule changes. And I said, no, I've been nocturnal all my life, and that's what I do. And I wrote a book about naps, and this is how it is. And he just calmly said, your body will decide. And I thought, okay. And within a week, I had become a total reverse schedule person, going to sleep at 10 p.m., waking up at 6 a.m. And I have maintained that schedule ever since.
Wow. Has it changed your creativity path?
I was afraid. Yeah, I was afraid it would. I think sometimes I wake up at 5 so that I have that special time when people are not awake and no one's expecting you to do anything. Every once in a while, 4 a.m., I wake up, and then it's like, oh, this is like the middle of the night, you know? But I was able to welcome love into my life, and I realized there was no time before for a relationship because nobody else was nocturnal.
Right.
So I wasn't having love in my life. So I had the most marvelous fiance who died in 2016. And then when I was 64, I met my now husband, David, and that's absolutely changed my life.
Oh, that's fabulous. And let me just say, I feel so grateful and thankful and blessed that you just read that chapter to me, that section, because to hear it coming from you, from your voice, is even extra special.
I thought you would like it.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to your background in publishing, you have created 16, 18 books?
I have 19 best-selling books and almost 3 million in print.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's everyone's dream, is to kind of have that. But I mean, you started writing at a very early age, and like, how did this all come about? What really inspired you to just start writing and creating like this?
Well, I came home from first grade and said, Mom, show and tell should be me every day. And I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I had a great mom and I had a great teacher, because she said, honey, no, the other kids need a chance. And I said, no, they don't. They're begging me to do it. Nobody wants to do it. And I find all these magic things every day. And so she got together with my teacher, and they came up with a plan for me to go to a different grade every day with show and tell.
What? That's cool.
And
How cool is that?
My first assignment was with a 6th grade class, and I was in first grade. So I knew I had to be really good or they would never listen to me.
Yeah.
And so I came in wearing a giant bush on my head, which I had fashioned a crown so it would fit on my head. It was a gooseberry bush. And I said, this is a gooseberry bush and you can eat the berries from the gooseberry bush. And I was plucking berries and I could still see all their faces, like just back in their chairs, like, what? And they, of course, loved it. So it was an immediate star. And so I went every day to a different grade. And I always say it's where I got my speaker's training, because I had to really learn and do
It's
things.
kind of the audience, even just like you said, being in first grade, going into a sixth grade classroom, that is you're like putting yourself out there for all the things to happen.
Yes. So then, let's see, when the abuse in my family it's so sad. It's so many people's stories, but a neighbor's father started basically molesting all the boys in the neighborhood, including my brother. And so then he began abusing me, which is what happens when we learn abuse, when we learn violence, then we carry it on. So I just tried to find every which way to live in that environment. So I started living inside books. I was an inveterate reader. I was at the library reading alphabetically through the library. I would literally just start, and at an age of, anyway, I have so many stories about me and books, but they literally saved my life because it was a world to live in other than the one I was living in. I don't recommend this route, by the way.
Right.
But that's what I did to adapt. And then I did something else really incredible. I made friends. I made best friends with a man in the neighborhood who reminded me of my grandfather, and his name was Mr. Boggs. He was 80 years old, and I was 10 years old when we met. And he used to call me his twirly friend because I would do wheelies on my bike in his driveway. And he took an interest in me, and he tried to teach me to play chess, and that didn't really work. He said I was too wiggly and I didn't listen. But he wanted to teach me to look close and to look far. So he bought me a microscope and a telescope and taught me about what those were. I mean, it was an amazing relationship. And then he got sick, and my mom said, Mr. Boggs is going in the hospital and he's probably not coming out. So I just need you to know. And I said, well, then I need to write something every day he's there so he knows how loved he is. So every day I wrote things and made little handmade packages, and those were sent or delivered either way to the hospital.
Wow.
And he did get out, and he said to me, you saved my life. I think you saved my life. He said, no one else called or wrote or came to see me while I was in there, and I had to get out to see you.
Oh, wow.
And I ran in the house and said, Mom, I'm supposed to be a beacon of hope that writes books for the world. And she was a very practical woman. So she said, here's a peanut butter sandwich.
Because we'll circle back to that.
Yeah. And then my beloved grandfather, who I called Bappa, he was one of my great mentors in my life. He, I think, kind of knew something was going on in the family. He basically had a tiny house built and delivered to my backyard. So this came in the summer, and there it was. It had sliding glass windows, linoleum, electricity. It was a tiny little white house with a Dutch door.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You led the tiny home movement.
Yes, I did. I was leading the tiny home movement. So I promptly moved in for the summer, basically, and wrote my first book. And so I was 10 years old, and I wrote and published my first book.
Wow.
So that was my self-published book, and it's called Mice from Mars, and it's kind of a thinly disguised abuse story about a mouse that comes to Earth and finds all these terrible things and decides to go back to Mars. And I often say that the art in it is not very different than the art I do now, which I think is great.
Wow. So 10 years old, and that was self-published. So back then, what did self-publishing look like? What did you have to do to...
Well, yeah. I should quantify that. I self-published one copy.
Okay. That's a one of a kind.
Yeah, it was a one of a kind.
But it is there nonetheless.
I made it real.
Started everything.
I made it real. It was a book. It's a book, and it was real, and it had pages, and you could turn them, and then it's important to let everyone know that I was then silent for 25 years.
Wow.
Which is very common, especially if you've been abused or have a lot of trauma in your life. I was just frozen. I was writing in journals, but I could never imagine sharing my writing with the world until I was 35 and I had survived a suicide attempt. And again, this is common with abuse survivors. It all came rushing in. I had 2 weeks of incest flashbacks and I couldn't eat or sleep. And I thought I just should die because this is so terrible. And thankfully, the attempt did not work, obviously. And I called the suicide prevention line and the woman said, "Did you really want to die or did you just want the pain to end?" And I said, "Oh, I just wanted to eat and sleep." And she said, "You need help. You need therapy. You need help." And I was living outside the money system at that time on barter and trade. Thankfully, I found a program that was, I think, $5 a week with a therapy intern. And I went every week. And that was the beginning of 15 years of therapy, which resolved most, if not all, of these issues that I was having. But that's when I fully turned to accept my creative gifts. And I started at 35 with that first book, A Creative Companion. And very quickly, the next year, I did Inspiration Sandwich.
Yeah. And you touch on, like I said, even earlier, within your writing, you're giving a lot of personal stories. I mean, you talk about that time in your life in this book. And I think that is the other side of it, which is when it comes to creating products like this, you have the opportunity to heal even further by sharing and getting.
Yes, thank you.
Out.
Thank you for talking about that. My first book, Creative Companion, didn't have any mention of abuse. And by the way, I want to go back to something because I want people who are also silent in some way to know it doesn't have to be through abuse or trauma. It's usually through inner critics like procrastination, perfectionism. So let's go back to that subject. But on that topic of writing about my stories, I've always felt like I was given so many gifts, and I was also given, obviously, tremendous challenges. There's a wonderful quote I live by, which is, "In your total vulnerability lies your perfect safety." When I really engaged with a full-on therapist, he said, "This Creative Companion book is great, but when are you going to write about the real stuff?" And I said to him, "Well, I'm never writing about the incest." And within 2 weeks, I'd written Inspiration Sandwich, and I'd written a chapter called Transforming Negatives. And I called my parents to tell them I was doing this because I thought I better advise them before this book comes out. And I wasn't asking them, by the way, I was telling them. And my mother said, "Good for you. You write about what happened to you." Because I had confronted the family, everyone, the whole system. And I had ended the abuse cycle, the generational abuse cycle. I had ended that. So I told them about the book and my mother said, "Good." And I found out later that she was an abuse survivor that had never told anyone all of her abuse stories.
Wow.
But then my father, unfortunately, said, "Why can't you wait till we're dead?" And I, unfortunately, said to him, "Well, why can't you die then? Because apparently I'm not supposed to live my life until you're dead." Well, thankfully, he did not die then. And he came to deeply apologize to me, and the whole family system was healed. We were able to talk openly. We got my older brother some help, which unfortunately didn't work, but we all joined in for healing all around. And so I know a lot about healing and I know a lot about pain. And I do know that the secrets that we keep are what make us feel so shamed. And I feel no shame. And I'm so happy to say that. And I'm so happy that I wrote, I think in every book I've written, I've shared about what happened to me so that people who do feel alone, who have no one to talk to or have never told anyone, can say, "Wow, Sark did it. Look at Sark. You know, she's in her purple and she's out, you know, she's speaking and she's feeling self-love. She's feeling so much self-love." And I always want to be a beacon for that.
The other things that always resonated with me too, and for me, especially in this book, or even just the mantras that you shared in here and what a mantra
the
was.
affirmation?
Yeah, the affirmations. When I first got this, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know any of those things yet. I hadn't experienced the need for self-awareness and supporting of the self and moving forward in different ways. And then also too, just even little tidbits in here about naps. You can ask any person that's ever worked for me that I live and die by a 20-minute nap. And I'm like, if you can't focus, you take a nap. And I'm like, this is where I learned about the power of a nap. So there's just so many things in your products that you bring that can touch no matter who is picking it up and their experiences that they are living
Thank
at the
you.
time.
And I said I wanted my books to be like ripe fruit that you could take a bite of anywhere and
Yes.
get nourishment. They're nonlinear. They don't have to be followed in a linear path. You can read them lying down in your pajamas. You'll get so much from them.
Just picking it up. I was on a call prior to this and recording, and I was talking with my editorial production manager, and she has a 10-year-old. And she was saying that her 10-year-old, her daughter, she's like, she's my writer. She's like, she loves books. She wants to write books. And I'm like, well, you need to get her some of Sark's books. I go, because you don't have to approach it in the same way that traditional author is looking at it. You can, just like you said, you can pick it up at any point, just flip to a page and start reading, and you don't feel like you've missed anything. You feel like you landed right where you needed to land. And then you can put it down and not feel bad that you didn't, quote unquote, finish it, because
Right.
you're going to pick it back up.
Right.
I love it. So I'm curious, when you had your first book published, how did that happen? Were you looking to get published?
Well, I wanted to publish for 25 years. And I had such a strong procrastinator and perfectionist, which, by the way, many people do. And it's a really neat trick if you have both of them, because it means you don't do anything.
You just sit there.
Yeah, you're just like, oh no. So after the suicide attempt, and after I got really good therapy and really good help, I realized, oh my goodness, I have these big journals and they're full of all these miracles. And I've been show and telling my whole life. I mean, I've lived the most wonderful life, even though there was self-destructive behavior and there were things that were related to the abuse, but there was also fantastic things and things that I knew I wanted to share. And so I got a call from a publisher. I mean, it's a fantasy for an author.
Yeah.
I got a call from a publisher who had seen my poster, How to Be an Artist. And many people had seen How to Be an Artist before they ever read any of my books. So I'm an artist as well as an author. So that makes it a very interesting thing. But as you know, I was given these words. And by the way, I write and create everything with what I call my inner wise self, which is part of each one of us has a giant mentor inside that's like just full of miracles and help and answers. And most people aren't accessing this part of themselves. And so it's one of the things I teach people, how to access and how to get answers that you can use. So all of my books have been written with this inner wise self, and my business has been formed, and the love relationship I'm in has been formed with my inner wise self. So I want to give full credit to that. So these words were given to me: how to be an artist, stay loose, learn to watch snails, plant impossible gardens, invite someone dangerous to tea, make little signs that say yes and post them all over your house. Yes, and they're on the wall behind me there in the like a long form, and they're in Inspiration Sandwich.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That poster has gone on to be sold. I mean, it's sold millions of copies. It's been made into stage plays. It was in Time magazine. It's been in major motion pictures. I mean, it really went full on.
That was like the first viral piece of content before there was internet and before there was TikTok to get.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the power of art and word of mouth, and something so powerful that's put out there that resonates with so many people that makes them want to either be part of it or to have a piece of that or to, purchase it. This is.
Yeah. I mean, Sark became a brand. Sark became a lifestyle brand without my even knowing what that was, 42 years ago. And then I wrote 18 other posters on how to really love a child, how to forgive your father, how to relax about money, how to be really alive. And those all went charging out into the world and into the books. And so the publisher called and said, are you ever going to write books? And so I had a meeting with the editor. I live in a magic cottage. There's a magic cottage in San Francisco. I'm not in it right now. It's right downstairs from me. I invited her to the magic cottage to have tea in the garden. And then she asked me that question again. And I said, I hope you don't think this is rude, but I really need you to leave right now because I'm going to start the book. And I almost pushed her out of the garden. Yeah. And I went in the magic cottage and I lit 100 tea light candles that I happened to have. And I opened a page and I started writing. And 2 weeks later, I had this book. I had this crooked, thin book. I think it's only 80 pages. I'm not sure. I'm not remembering right now how many pages, but it's small. It's short. But it was everything I wanted to say about being your own creative companion, having that viewpoint. And then she invited me to have tea with her again at a place in Sausalito in the Bay Area called the No Name Bar, which I thought was so funny. How could there be a bar with no name? And that was literally what they called it. And when I went to the bathroom, she plucked that book out of my backpack, which I thought was pretty on the edge, like, what are you doing going in my backpack? Yeah. But I turned out not to be angry because when she held it up, she said, we have to publish this just like it is with no changes. Wow. And I had even tried to draw the barcode, but it was, you can't really get it straight enough. So that's what happened. And that first book came out and I asked people to send me something from your heart, having no idea that, again, a viral response. I started to get thousands of letters, thousands. I mean, the post people would bring in these giant bins and I was overwhelmed. I would read them. I had this rule that if they were sent by someone under 12, I would personally answer them because that was very meaningful. I mean, they're all meaningful to me, but I wanted to make sure any child would get an answer. But honestly, it got so out of control. I couldn't continue to do that anymore. And then I was also writing a best-selling book every year and then speaking, teaching, and traveling. And then I started a product business with all the art. It was a wild time.
These are the stories I love because I always tell people that there isn't a straight path to anything in publishing. And, when it comes to product development and a lot of it, you can't manufacture it. Like, I think if you sat down saying, okay, I'm going to go write my next bestseller, that might not be the bestseller because you're putting a different intention behind it. But when you go into something and it's so organic and like you said, it's being channeled in pretty much.
Yes,
it becomes something beautiful and inspiring on its own.
I tell people that, I did go to college, but I often tell people that I went to collage.
Yeah, I like that.
Because I really did collage it all together, and continue to do that, actually. I'm nonlinear. I'm very moved by spirit, and I'm always wanting to tune in to the collective consciousness. And I do that on the inspiration line, which you have just called. And
the inspiration line, people, it still works. I left Sark a message this morning, so I called it in the back of the book, and it sounds like you started it and said that it was new because you said introducing the Sark inspiration line, and this was done in 92. This is when I got it. So I'm like, okay, she started this in 92. That's when I started college. And that's when I bought this book. So let me call it and see if it's still working. And I did. I left you a message today.
Oh, I know. And I love when people call and say, I had no hope that this would be working. Yeah. And I'm looking at my book from 1991. How's this ever going to be working? And I've maintained it all these years. It's my free offering to the world because I wanted my readers to have a place to connect with me because I write so intimately that people feel they know me. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a way to know them.
Yeah.
And so people leave messages, which I have the great privilege of listening to. And it also informs me about what the collective consciousness is wanting.
Yeah. And, all of this that we're talking about, what I've come to even realize too is you just tried it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just tried it. Like, okay, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to put my mailing address on here for people to send me stuff. I'm going to open up a hotline for inspiration hotline and just try it and see if it sticks. And if it doesn't matter. You scratched that itch, you tried it, you put it out there. But like, I think that's also just like you had said too earlier, which is that perfectionism and I want to get it right. And I want to make this do this. And it's not about that. It's just kind of going with your gut and just trying something and putting it out there.
Yeah. And I would say too, when you're being advised by your intuition, it's really powerful because it's not just the personality self or the ego self that wants certain things. It's a power much greater than me. and gives me strength and power to try these things without fear of rejection in general or fear of being made fun of. I mean, I've heard everything. I don't know if I've heard every negative comment, but I've heard a lot of things about, people's judgments and people's assessments and people, it doesn't matter. And I love teaching people how to become completely empowered by their intuition and undisturbed by inner critics and having a feelings care system so that everything works together in a wonderful way so that you feel good most of the time. Yeah. I love that.
I love that. So since you've been in publishing for quite some time, how has it changed from that first book that you did? And she's like, this is it. Let's just go with it. We're just going to put it on press. What has happened since then? Is it still like kind of an easy process, especially too when you're working with?
No, it isn't.
It's different.
Yeah, it's very different. And I'm in the mood now to actually turn to self-publishing fully. It's so funny. When I published Succulent Wild Woman in 1997, I was asked to write what I thought that book was. And I turned in a, 4-page handwritten big purple pen description of Succulent Wild Woman. That was the basis of an $800,000 book deal. So then fast forward.
That was a while ago. I mean, that was I think that's in its 119th printing or something like that.
Yeah. The Succulent Wild Woman, it was another one that really touched hearts and moved through the world. And now people are wanting all of these. And before I say this, I just want to say, I love publishers and I love what they do. And I love that we have ways to get books moving around this world. So I want to emphasize that. And there's ways that you can play the publishing game and really enjoy. And I think if I were at a different stage of my career, I might be willing to play that game. Like, give me a long form proposal, which okay. And I did it for one of my books and I don't care to do that again.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm averse to work. That doesn't feel fun to me. And I am so committed to ease and fun. But believe me, if I wanted to publish traditionally, I would absolutely adopt the things that are necessary to have that happen. I was asked 2 years ago to write a new introduction to Succulent Wild Woman for the 25th anniversary edition. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to encapsulate 25 years of my life into an introduction?
Yeah. Into 4 pages.
I ended up working with my agent and with the publisher, and we came up with a way for me to add 4 chapters. Because I thought, okay, so I kept the original like a time capsule, and then I put 2 chapters at the front and 2 chapters at the back and 150 new pieces of art. And I'm so proud of it. And it's been brought up to date with diversity and inclusion. I was so happy to both keep the time capsule and then add the updated material. And I've just done the audiobook of it too, which also is super magical. And I interviewed my husband, David, in that and also included the inspiration line message that he sent me that caused me to meet him.
When I listened to it, it said, you're like, I'm going to give you a little insight. I just got married. I think the message I heard. And then you're like, and you said that, you mentioned that, you're like, who I met here on my inspiration hotline.
Yes. He had a woman friend that told him that he was a male version of me. You are like the male Sark and you need to meet Sark. And it turned out he already knew about me and he'd been periodically calling the inspiration line. But in this case, I had been with John, my previous fiance, for 4 years until he got sick and died. And I hired a matchmaker. I did some online dating. Nothing worked. And so I wrote, I'm dating the world. And I wrote this impassioned letter and I posted it and it hit a chord. Everybody, I want to do that. I either want to learn how to do that or I want to do what you're doing. I gave description of how I was doing this. And David read that letter. And he called the inspiration line and he said, I just love that you're dating the world and I love how you're loving the world. And he said, that's how I live too. And then he said, I'm just loving your heart right now. And then he said, I just love you. I 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 love you.
He filled up the tape.
He filled up the tape and then he said, is this too much? I love you. I love you. I love you. I thought this is either my soulmate or someone to perhaps not contact. I wasn't sure, but I called him the next day and we talked for 3 hours and we started laughing right away. And I knew that he was my soulmate. And we talked for 3 months every day. He was living at the time on the East Coast. So we decided I went out to meet him. And for the first time, we hadn't even done video. We just talked on the phone. And there were a few bumps at the beginning, but we got through those and that's it. And we got married a couple of years ago and he's my co-mentor. He's also a writer. We mentor people in our private mentoring.
Nice.
And he's brilliant. He was a former Hollywood movie producer, produced major motion pictures, and is brilliant and just so much fun and just a miracle person. It's just an absolute joy. And he's known as the angel of love. And that's how he lives.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. I love this story.
Yeah.
Love.
Me too.
And
love.
I
put that in the anniversary edition, the story of how we met and a photos of he and I. And then,
awesome.
And so that inspiration line message that I just reprised for you is in the audiobook. We found the recording from the inspiration line and put his message in there.
Oh, wow. That is so fun.
Isn't that fun?
That is fun. And again, like you are embracing all the new pieces. Like, you know, now you're moving into audiobooks. I just wanted people to understand, like you have a wide variety of products. Like, just like you alluded to earlier, you don't just have these amazing books. You're not just an author of books, but you have posters and products and card decks and cards that you sell. Did you, at a certain point, have a vision and map it out in a sense, or did it really come across organically?
Well, both. I mean, again, my intuition said people need physical demonstrations. I knew that a poster would help someone, would inspire them. Mm-hmm. You know, if you were seeing how to be an artist, or if you were seeing how to be a happy writer, you know, if you're seeing these messages in these words and art, it would support people. And I want to support people to live a more empowered and creative life. And so what could be better than, you know, having books and having, you know, they can come and hear me speak and they can, you know, just all the things. And so I love art and my whole life is art and writing, basically.
I'm curious, this is more of a technical aspect. So since you are an artist, this is like watercolor you're doing on beautiful paper.
I actually paint with ink.
You're doing ink. When it comes to production, is any of it digital or is it?
Yeah. I've moved with the digital times.
You have,
I mean, yeah. So there used to be so many costs of scans. I was going to say coloring machine and oh my God, you know,
I remember those days and I look at I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that they're like, because I know if we had revisions to just one spot illustration, like what that was going to look like.
Yeah. So I always move with the times. People talk about past lives. I have future lives and I have a lot of memories of the future. I think I came back to this time. And so I'm always getting surprised by how archaic things are and why are we still doing it this way or that way. So every time there's a new way, I adopt it. I'm not always willing and sometimes I get crabby, but
and now you have like a normal day schedule too. Like you can do all this stuff while everyone asks the questions like, wait a minute, how do I do that again? Or what?
Yes.
You know, well, everyone's awake.
Yes.
So you have taken all of this experience that you have, and now you have a program, which I would love to talk about. You have your Build Your Own program.
Well, I'm so excited because it isn't even a program as much as it is an entire system to do what I did. This is my legacy project. I put the exact formula and processes that I use to do everything I've been talking about into 3 pathways, which there's a dreaming pathway, a writing pathway, and a publishing pathway. And those all come together to this system called Build Your Own Book, Sark's publishing pathway. And so I have handcrafted videos. These are not how-to videos. These are how-to-be videos. I put all my iconic stories, and then I pulled in everyone I know all of the incredible New York Times bestsellers, all the people, I brought them into my studio and did full on incredible conversations with them, asking them all the questions that my writers want to know and getting the answers from them. I'm so proud of this program.
Awesome.
And then I trained and certified Sark coaches. I'd always wanted to do this. I thought people need accountability. They don't want to just have a program that they have to log into and just go by themselves. Not that those can't be wonderful too. I have some of those that are wonderful and other people have them. But I wanted something where you are so being held, like you are literally being walked hand in hand. We have the best coaches. They are editors. They have publishing experience. People are flipping out over what is happening when they go on this publishing pathway. And they're called dance steps. And there's rewards and there's naps. And it is so exciting. And there's resource sections and there's over 100 pages of support documents. I won't even say documents, all kinds of colorful support sheets that guide you. Put all my miracle methods, all of my intuition teachings, this is a life course.
When somebody comes in and says, okay, this is what I want to do, like what
Yeah,
is that?
the live portion is with your coach. So you have a live portion there. And then we do have bonus classes, both in ones that have already been taught. And then we'll periodically be there's going to be some, live right together things. We're building out the whole thing. It's everything I ever dreamed of having and what I wish I'd had,
Yeah. Well, this. The publishing industry is so, I will say the same thing you said, which is I love publishing. I come from a publishing background. That's why I love helping people self-publish, because I know all the things that we, went through, and I know how to help them do that. But, it is an opaque industry, and there's so many questions that authors have. And to have a resource such as this, especially so they get to hear from editors and all the industry professionals, that is gold.
Yes, that's what I wanted to do. So people could stop investing other money to get these bits of information. Yeah. I wanted to put it all in one place. And then my team did ask me to mention, because I get so, you can hear me, I'm so passionate. Yeah. They want to make sure that I say that at this point, it's limited to the number of people we can accept. So right. If someone's listening and they're interested, you do want to take immediate action, because we make sure the coach is well matched. You want to make sure that everybody gets this unparalleled experience.
So are they in pods with the coach, or is it one-on-one then?
Well, it's one-on-one.
It is one-on-one. Wow.
It's one-on-one, and they have email access. They have editing. They have communications in between. They have a monthly session where they're on video. They're getting handheld and guided so that the coach is able to say, this is what I recommend. Here's what you can do next. They're getting plans and accountability to get their book done, published, and marketed.
Wow.
We introduced something called the Joy of Marketing, which is what I named it, because
someone has a joy in marketing. No, I'm just okay. Marketing one of those things that's
yeah. And so I brought in experts on that, and we're going to be actually expanding that.
It's very robust. It's just this is exactly what you said. It's that experience that any aspiring author, to have this information and to have somebody at your fingertips like this that can guide you, is really an amazing experience to have.
Yeah. Thank you. I will join you. It's robust. It's unparalleled, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm so excited. Sometimes people think, oh, videos, I don't know if I want to, I'm tired of videos, we all get fatigued on these different platforms, but these are handcrafted, handmade by me in my art studio, where I'm completely vulnerable and also guiding you through a process and doing it along with you. These are not standard videos.
Right.
And so I've had to...
It's not you standing there with a white background and nothing else.
Yeah. Or the PowerPoint.
And if you were over here,
I realized instead of how-to videos, they are how to be, because, and everyone is saying their entire lives become better when they're in this, because so much writing happens off the page. I'm sure you know this and experienced this. And if you don't have a good system for what happens off the page, you're not getting as much good stuff on the page.
Yeah.
So it's, again, exact processes and systems I use to create 19 best-selling books.
Wow. So when you say that it's taking them through 3 pathways, what does that mean?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, they start with the dreaming part. They start with, what are they dreaming to write? And what is stopping them from doing that? And what stopped them before? So it's all about the dreaming part. And by the way, these are nonlinear. They're all together. You're not.
Oh, you don't have to go from here to here to here.
No.
It's like your books. You can.
Exactly. It's like grapefruit.
Right.
And then they have the writing section, which is all the things. I wrote a whole thing, why writers don't write and what to do about it. Mm-hmm. And one of them is stop trying to write every day, because writers torture themselves of like, oh, I didn't write again today. And I have systems to show them what kind of a writer are you and what will benefit you the most. If you're a burst writer, someone that writes in bursts of time. If you're a more linear writer that's more organized. I mean, I'm telling you, this program, when we really get in and describe, people are like, what? Like, how is this even happening? We spent over 2 years developing and doing this. Yeah. And then the publishing section, all about editors, all about agents, all about the joy of marketing. And then there's all the, I call it kindset instead of mindset, but there's all the kindset things. Like, what are you resisting? How are we melting your resistance? And the people going through this are having absolute success and finishing things in half the time that they thought. And I teach writers how most writers think they don't have enough writing. 90% of them have never even put it all together.
Yeah.
And that sounds so obvious, but they don't. It's in their computer, it's in journals, it's in Post-it notes. They don't know what they have. So we have this incredible system to get it all together and then start working with it.
Does it matter like what kind of book they want to write?
No.
No. It fits with anything, whether it's a novel or a cookbook or
we have children's book people, we have poetry people, we have memoir people, we have literature people, we have personal growth people. We have novel people. We just have, it's so exciting and great.
So now are you helping them to also so when you say published, is it then they pick if they want to try to get traditionally published, or is it also, so they have the tools to go either way?
Yes. And we're giving them all the resources. Here's what to know and to think about if you're going to self-publish. Here's what to know and to think about if you're going to traditionally publish. Here's what to do if you want to start by self-publishing, knowing you're going to move to traditional, you'd like to do that. So we're helping them
it's like cross-pollination of all the information that they need. So and they can make their decision the right way for them.
And helping them make a decision.
Helping.
Because some people get frozen or overwhelmed. So it's one of the reasons I wanted to do it this way, so that people really had a real guide. In addition to the material, they have someone helping them go through the material.
Wow, this is amazing. Well, Sark, I know that you are a busy woman and you have to answer the hotline. You have to go get my message that I left you. And you'll get to hear that I left a little for you earlier today. But I would love just if you could give our audience maybe some sort of inspiration to set them onto their way if they are thinking about publishing something, if they want to pursue your build your own book pathway and learn more. We will definitely have all the links in our show notes, but I just would love
to hear and plus I made them a gift.
Oh,
so yeah, I like it. I made them the dream discovery. I made them. Ooh. So this is the dream discovery. So they get to fill in the blanks and answer what they're dreaming of. And it asks specific questions. What are you willing to do for your dreams? What are you not willing to do for your dreams? So it helps people locate what their dream is.
And what a perfect timing, because we're going into the new year. And you need to set new intentions and dream bigger for 2025. So.
Yes. And I'm on a real miracle mission here to help as many authors as possible get their words and books into this world. It's my absolute privilege and passion to do that. And also to really teach people how to use their intuition how to navigate inner critics so that you're not stopped by them anymore. And I have really fun, effective, simple processes and practices that really work. And they work not just with me, but with the thousands of people that I've mentored and now in the pathways. So I would say to people, let yourself dream and ask your intuition to join you. I've been teaching this for decades now. Most of us know we have our intuition. If I ask a group of people that I'm teaching, how many people know they have it? 90% of the hands go up. Then I say, how many people are asking their intuition every single day about every single thing about their life? 2 hands go up.
Right.
Because we think we have to just save it for if we're sick or if we have an accident or something happens, something that's bad. We're not understanding. We're supposed to ask, is it good time to have a snack? Should I call that person back? Is it time for a nap? I mean, these are the kinds of questions in addition to the big questions of life. We are meant to be mentored by our intuitions. That's my most passionate thing that I can say, is for people to understand they have intuition. And I will just say to everyone that you can start writing what I call inner wise self-love notes. And this is where you set a timer. You can set a timer for 3 minutes, and you can, let me pull one up right now, right here, and I can read it to you. An intuitive inner wise self-love note. I love teaching this. Okay, so here's one I wrote yesterday. Oh, my dear sparkling star heart of golden light, Susan. My inner wise self is very effusive. I see you wanting to write everything and wondering how there'll ever be enough time. I see you leaping with excitement to your pens and papers. I see you collapsed on the floor, sobbing from the accusations that inner critics make. I see you rising up with counterstatements that you make to those accusations and do not let them stop you. I see you resisting writing and then feeling furious that more writing isn't done. I see you having the glorious experience of being written with the help of your incredible inner wise self. I see you channeling wisdom for the world. I see you wanting every writer to have a place for their words to be seen, known, and loved. I see your spectacular heart expanding and growing all the time. I see the words being delivered and the books stacking up, filled with love. Rest in between producing words and art. Let yourself be lifted and carried by the spirit of the world and the creative gifts that it contains. Let yourself be surrounded and supported with kindred spirits writing from their hearts to the world as you do. Love your inner wise self. Your inner wise self will customize your message for you. Some people's are very abbreviated. One of my all-time favorite, I was an 18-year-old kid who stood up in a workshop and read his inner wise self-love note off of his phone. And this is what he said. He looked down and he said, "Hey, dude, I effing love you." And we all cried. Yeah. So that was written in 3 minutes. Your inner wise self knows exactly what to say to you. And then you can start asking questions. How do I do this? I'm really crabby. I need to finish something. How do I do it? I'm really scared to publish this, whatever. Help me. These are the kind of questions you can start asking.
Yeah, I love that. And, going back to the inner wise self and also just trusting your intuition, like all of that is really just tied in together. So if you are thinking about creating something special, I definitely think you should check out Sark's big body of work over at planetsark.com because it is now the planet. There's so much inspiration there, so much stuff. You are more than just an artist. You really are a beacon of joy and you provide so much inspiration to so many people. So I just want to say thank you again so much for being here.
And thank you, Leanna, for all the shows that you have done promoting, helping, spreading magic and miracles, and all the people you have on and all of your heart. Great job. I'm very impressed with you. I told you I listened to 2 of your shows. And I'm so honored to be on Creatively Speaking and to have had this opportunity with you. And I know that everyone who is touched by you, your work, your words is blessed.
Well, thank you very much. And maybe someday I'll get to meet you in person. Yes. So enjoy. And thank you again for coming.
Thank you.